Well, family, right now it is time to go on the line, and we're actually not on the line. This brother is in studio with me today, and what a great pleasure it is. We have with us today a brother out of Los Angeles, tenor saxophonist, composer, just an all-around big name in jazz right now. Matter of fact, he is the biggest name in the art form of jazz today. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Cool Jazz Countdown, none other than Kamasi, Washington. How you doing, brother?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
The pleasure is all mine, man. Welcome to the East Coast, matter of fact.
Yeah.
We've been waiting for you.
Oh, we've been waiting to get over here.
Well, good stuff, man. So much to get into. First and foremost, you're out of Los Angeles, an area that's been getting a lot of press lately since the release of Straight Outta Compton. Your musical journey. Share with us your musical journey, being a kid in L.A., an area where there's definitely some good, but probably more that's not good, and a lot of distractions out there. How is it that you ended up falling in love with this art form that we call jazz?
It's interesting. Well, I'm a second-generation musician, so my dad's a saxophone player, musician, so he'd been giving me music, and he had been pushing jazz to me since I was born. But right, like, growing up in South Central LA, there's a pressure for young African American men or boys or males to kind of succumb to a negative self-image, mm-hmm. and that will lead you to having a negative path and a dark trail. And I found myself on that same trail, and it was weird, like. In my neighborhood, it seemed like that was all that was around until I had a cousin that gave me a Art Blakey mixtape, and that's when I really got into jazz.
A mixtape.
It was a mixtape. Art Blakey and Lee Morgan.
You still had that tape?
Yeah, I wish I had that tape. I had those albums.
Okay.
I know what albums they were now. But he gave me this tape, and like. My dad had been showing me all his records all my whole life. So when he gave me that tape, I went back to the back and found all the records, and it just kind of rejuvenated, or really lit a fire to my passion for music. And then all of a sudden, I saw my community in a different light. I started to find out that a lot of my neighbors like jazz, and they couldn't wait to give me their favorite, Jazz Crusaders record, or their favorite Grover Washington, and then, Dexter Gordon, and
right.
They couldn't wait to give me their favorite records. And then in that, I found an area in my community called Leimert Park, which actually is the creative and artistic hub of Los Angeles. So many of the greatest musicians and artists from LA came up in Leimert Park right there in South Central. So it was an interesting kind of like, it was almost like the music pulled up in a veil for my own community, and like we were known so much for gang violence and
right.
drugs and all that kind of stuff, and that's definitely there. But what's also there is the central hub for all of culture in LA. So it was a cool thing. It was like music kind of like made me learn something about my own
I was going to say, would you say that music then saved you?
Yeah, absolutely. And then it was an interesting thing that I had friends that I grew up with who were already in music. Some of them were already in music. Mm-hmm. Some of them got into music after I got into music. But we all kind of somehow ended up using music to save us. It was a whole group of us. It's about 13 of us.
Wow.
That are all doing really well in music and doing big things. Some of the greatest musicians in the world grew up right there in South Central LA, and we all kind of had the same discovery. Music came to us, and then we found Leimert Park, and then from Leimert Park we've kind of like gone all over the world.
So a couple of names to put out there: Flying Lotus, Mos Def, Lauryn Hill. You toured with Snoop Dogg, Shaka Khan, Stanley Clarke, Kendrick Lamar, countless others out there. How old are you?
34.
34 years of age. Do you realize that most musicians out there would pay good money or even give up something that they love to be in the kind of musical company that you've already been with only at the age of 34?
Yeah, it was a blessing. It's my life has been, I've been very blessed in my life. And, it seems like every stage of the way, especially in my own development, like what I needed for my development, someone would come along and take me on tour, and that's where I would learn it. You know, so it's like this sound that we kind of that's becoming popular from LA. And the crazy thing is that my friends, the same people, would come and get them, and so there's been a sound that's been cultivating between all of us that has been, in a lot of ways, nurtured by the legends of music before us. And so, like, we have our own sound, and it's definitely, we have our own thing that comes from us, but it's been passed down to us from people before us as well.
So I find myself putting your name alongside some great company, and Robert Glasper, Roy Hargrove, Russell Gunn. These are the cats that I consider to be those who are connecting the dots, moving the art form forward, but not just that, but also bringing in the new generation or the next generation and other cultures and other genres through jazz.
Wow, I'm honored to be in there with that. Those are all brilliant musicians.
So then what makes Kamasi Washington so special?
I mean, I think the same thing that makes anyone special. I mean, I've always been dedicated to being me and retaining who I am. And in doing that, I've built myself up. You know, every opportunity I had to play with someone, instead of losing myself in them, I built myself up with them. You know, and I think that, like, when you look at most great musicians, that's what they did. Every time they played with someone, historically, like, they took those opportunities to grow themselves, not lose themselves. And so it's a very slight and subtle difference, but it's a very big difference, you know. And I can feel it as a musician. I can feel myself, like, there were times where it was like, oh man, I can feel myself, I'm getting lost in this. And you have to kind of, like, be dedicated, because sometimes it won't be what you're making money off of, you know. Like, we would go out on the road and make good money with Snoop, but every city we went to, the first thing we did was find a jam session. And we rolled in there, and Snoop had us wearing our straight out of Compton stage uniform, so we roll in there with Chucks, some blue khakis and a gray T-shirt. And go to the jam session. They look at us like, what y'all finna do? And we were like, well, we finna play giant steps at 350 BPMs. And they'd be like, you know, so that was kind of like, we just always kind of kept a true spirit to the music. And that has kind of, over the years, created something that's really special, I think, that people can relate to.
If you are just joining us in the studio, tenor saxophonist out of L.A., Kamasi Washington, spending some time with us here on the Cool Jazz Countdown. Kamasi, you've had the pleasure of playing with so many out there, but who is it in the business that mentored you, that grabbed you and said, hey, young fella, you might want to do it this way as opposed to that way, or just give you a different way of thinking about things as it pertains to the music business?
I've had a lot of people. I mean, the first person was my dad.
Okay.
You know, he from Jump Street always was real honest with me, because, you know, when you're young and you're talented, you can get a little big-headed, you know. So he was always there to tell me, like, nah, you're not there yet.
And I understand that your father didn't even want you to get into music initially, or didn't want to show you the way into music initially, because you come out of a musical family and you were, one of the last ones to finally catch the bug? Well,
he didn't let me play saxophone at first. Okay. He always wanted me to play music. We had to play music. There wasn't even a choice when we were growing up. My older brother was really, really talented. So when I was a kid, I was kind of into science and math and stuff. My older brother was.
You were different.
Yeah, he was like this kind of child prodigy who can play the blues on the piano and learning Stevie Wonder songs when he was 7 years old and stuff like that. So I was the late bloomer in that, like, you know, it wasn't until I was about 11 or 12 that I really got into music like that. And my dad wanted me to learn how to play clarinet and flute before I learned how to play saxophone. So I had to kind of almost force the issue. And I just took his saxophone one day and learned how to play it. And, like, I learned how to play this song called Sleeping Down and Sleep On, and we heard that. Then he kind of took me seriously. And then he took me over to my uncle's church, and we started playing in my uncle's church, and that was like what kind of set me on my way.
Nice. So a musical family. 7 of you?
Yep.
Okay, and where do you lie within the 7?
I'm number 3.
Number 3. And you gotta watch out, they say 3 is a magic number. Or something like that. No, is it 3? Okay, it's 3 something. Anyway, so this band of yours, let's talk about them. The West Coast Get Down. it's pretty rare that younger musicians can communicate in a way in which they're finishing each other's sentences musically. But you all, I guess it makes sense because you've been playing together just about all of your lives.
Yeah. I met Ronald Bruner when I was 3 years old, and that was like the first friendship. And then he went to school with Brandon Coleman and Tony Austin, elementary school. So
Okay.
I met them in elementary school, and then I met Ryan Porter in junior high school, and Miles Mosley and Cameron Graves in high school, and Patrice Quinn right out of high school. So yeah, it's been, some of us 30 years, some of us 20 years, and the real thing is that we had a friendship that went beyond the music. Like Brandon Coleman, for instance, when we met Brandon Coleman, he wasn't playing piano.
Okay.
He was just our friend. You know what I mean? And then when he was 17, he decided he was going to join up with us and start playing music.
Y'all not gonna leave me out.
Yeah, and then by 19, he was like the cat in town, and we were all like, "How'd you do that,
How did
Brandon?"
that happen?
Because we've been doing this since we were babies, So it was, we've gone through real struggles, not just musical struggles together. We've been there for each other for life stuff, and so when we play music together, it's almost like the connection that happens musically it runs so deep that like there's a confidence that I know whatever I'm gonna go to, whatever I'm gonna do musically, Miles Mosley can follow me. I know that Cameron Graves will understand where I'm coming from, no matter what I'm doing. So sometimes, when your connection is just musical, you don't necessarily know that.
Right.
Because I don't know if you know what struggles I've been through, but they know my real struggles and they know where the music is coming from.
Right.
Not just the music, but the life thing that the music actually comes from. So it's a different level of connection.
So this debut CD, The Epic, pretty big name. 3-disc set, your debut album, 173 minutes of music, 17 songs. You have the nerve, the chutzpah, the balls, if you will, to all of you to go into a studio, shut it down for a month to record this music. Whose idea was this?
Well, it was a collective idea. I mean, what happened is when Flying Lotus in 2010, he asked me to make a record for Brain Feeder.
Okay.
And my thought immediately went to like, man, I had this group of musicians I grew up with, and we never really recorded like
Your own stuff?
our own stuff, not properly. Like I have a little studio at the back of my house.
Okay.
And so we recorded there. We recorded little stuff here and there, but we never really went in, really did it right. So I was like, you know what? We have an opportunity. Brain Feeder has an audience that's open-minded that I think will really at least give the music a chance. So I want to like just, if nothing else, document this sound that we have, at least my version of the sound, because we all make music and there's a common spirit to it. But we all have different sounds.
Right.
So I was like, man, I just want to get my sound, my version of this sound down. And so basically every person I called and explained that to, they were like, man, I was just thinking the same thing. I need to get in the studio and get my version of this sound down, what I mean, down,
right.
On wax. And so in the end, we came to an understanding that like, we all wanted to do this. So in order to really do it, we had to make a commitment, and so we all canceled all of our gigs in December of 2011.
And that's how you were eating.
That's how we were eating. So it was like not only were we not making any money, we were spending money, in the studio, calling in other musicians, like the strings and choir. I mean, they were my friends, so they gave me a good rate, but they didn't come in there for free, So it was a major commitment, but it felt good though because it was like, all of us. Even like people who started later, we all have dedicated our whole lives to music. And, as much of a blessing as it's been playing for other people, to be a good collaborator, to be a good, sideman basically. You have to compromise yourself to fulfill someone else's vision, and that's cool. Like if I'm playing for you, it's your gig, it's your music. I'm going to do what I need to do to realize your vision. So whatever that is, like Rashaka, sometimes I play all keyboards. I wouldn't even play the saxophone.
Oh, wow.
Because that's what she needed. She didn't need me to play saxophone. She needed me to play piano. So with this situation, what we all got was we got a whole month of no compromising. Just like, or only compromising for each other.
Right.
So like when it was my turn to do stuff in the studio everyone was there for me to do whatever I needed to have done to make my vision work, and I didn't have to compromise my vision at all because there was no one telling us what to do.
Right.
And so it was a difficult month because it was almost like our own little musical sweatshop. We were in there from 10 in the morning till 2 in the morning every day, but the results were amazing.
How many songs were written in that 1 month time span?
Well, collectively, we had 190 songs we recorded.
190 songs.
Yeah, for 8 different projects, it was like 3 terabytes of music.
I mean, some producers and writers will never write 190 songs in their lifetime in 1 month.
Yeah.
How many of those songs are yours?
45 of them on mine.
45 songs. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's what you do. So the band is massive, and it's not a lot of duplication there at all. You got 2 drummers, 2 basses, pianos and keys, the horns out front. But listening, the players are never in the same place at the same time.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's almost like it's like a little musical village. Each person has their purpose, and we found that out maybe actually years and years before because we all grew up together, so we'd known each other for years, and we all played with each other, but we never really played all together at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had a gig one day, and I had called Cameron Graves, Thundercat, and Ronald Bruner to be the rhythm section.
Okay.
And they all canceled on me the day of the gig.
Oh, wow.
So I
Your
called,
friends?
Yeah, my friends. So I called Miles, Mosley, Brandon Coleman, and Tony Austin to come and sub to come do the gig for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was cool because they'd been my band before too, so it wasn't like it was almost like a sub thing. It was just like sometimes I use them, sometimes I use them.
Right.
So somehow they all showed up, and I was just like, well, let's just see what this sounds like. We're just all playing together because we all known each other. Miles and Thundercat got the same birthday. Brandon and Cameron had the same birthday. So I was like,
okay.
Well, let's see what happens.
Planets have aligned.
Yeah. Let's see what happens. And it was amazing. It was like an uncanny degree. It was like one person's strengths were the other person's weaknesses. So what I ended up getting was like this perfect version. Like you put Miles, Mosley, and Thundercat together, and you get like this ultimate bass player who has no weaknesses but only strengths because they kind of just naturally, because the other person kind of is covering their weaknesses, they just focus on what they're so brilliant at.
Right.
And it was this amazing thing when no one really got in the way of anyone else, and it was like magic. Like the first gig we ever played together, it was like with the double rhythm section. It sounded like we've been playing forever. I mean, we'd known each other forever, but we hadn't played like that. That was the first time.
Collectively.
Yeah, so it was cool.
Again, in the studio today, Kamasi Washington. We're talking about his debut release, a 3-disc set. It is called The Epic. The beauty of this project, Kamasi, you bring in a 32-piece orchestra, 20-person choir, who you say are your friends. Okay, not too many people know 20-piece choir and 32-piece orchestra. But I tell you, it's only in America that a kid out of South Central L.A., with all kind of distractions around him, could grow up and be writing string arrangements. How does that even? It's hard to imagine, and then to see it and to hear it, it's something that's out of this world. Tell me about this vocalist that you have on here, Patrice Quinn, who I know you hold dear to your heart, and when I hear her voice, it's one thing that stands out for sure. There's truth in her voice. Tell me about it.
She's amazing. I met Patrice Quinn like literally this summer after I graduated from high school.
Okay.
So, in high school, I was, all of us, we were like super serious musicians. I mean, we were practicing 8-9 hours a day. We were going to every jam session.
Wow.
Every time someone in town. In high school, yeah.
Okay.
I had to give my parents credit. I never had a curfew or anything. We were out all night, every night playing
Good job,
music.
Pops.
So I was at a jam session. So myself and Ryan Porter were backstage, and musicians are sometimes hard on singers, especially jazz musicians, especially young jazz musicians, especially
radio folk too, radio programmers too.
Yeah. So we're backstage, and we meet this young lady, and she's super sweet, and she's like, "Hi, I'm Patrice." I'm like, "Oh, how you doing, Patrice?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm singing tonight. I just started singing last week." And we were like, "Okay."
Here's another one.
And then she got on stage and she sang, I bet she sang "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." And it was like the most beautiful thing I ever heard in my life. And I was like, wow. So at that time, we were playing at Fifth Street Dix with that band. And we were wild. We were definitely, that's where we were learning our directions at Fifth Street Dix. This is back years and years and years ago.
That's where you learn your stripes at. Huh?
Yeah,
you earn your stripes.
Yeah, so we were taking things. We move around a lot musically. Like, you know, people come to the show tomorrow night, they'll see like the music shifts and changes and it moves all the time. And not too many singers are really comfortable singing with us because of that, because you don't know how the song is going to go. You know, it may change keys, it may change tempos, it may change time signatures. And so Patrice came in and she has this like natural connection with music that like she came in and the first song she ever sang with us, she comes in and she wanted to sing Around Midnight and she wanted to sing it in D flat. So I said, we're playing Around Midnight, we're playing it in D flat. Somehow I think Miles didn't hear me, right?
Okay.
So he plays it in the normal key. Cameron did hear me. So Cameron starts it off in D flat. Now Cameron has perfect pitch, so that means that he can hear any note that anyone's playing. So he starts it off in D flat, and so she hears it in that key. Miles comes in the original key, and Cameron hears that, switches to the original key. She sings it in D flat over that, but just somehow is able to make it fit and changes every note that she needs to change. It was like an amazing experience. I was like, how did this not turn to a train wreck? And you know, she had the gig right there.
Right.
You
nice. Know, Patrice Quinn.
Yeah,
looking for big things from this sister. So, listening to the music here, there are a couple of saxophonists out there that resonate with me, in which when I listen to their music, it's a spiritual experience. Pharoah Sanders being one, Kenny Garrett being the other. I've heard their music and it's stopped me at times where I've gotten chills. One particular tune on this project, when I first put that CD in my CD player in my office, I'm listening and right around the 5 or 6 minute mark, I shut it off because I have these chills and I feel something coming over me and I couldn't receive it at that moment. The song Ask Him totally blew me away. It took me 2 days before I could go back to that song. And I decided not to play it again in my office, but to play it on air for my listeners to hear. And it was the most amazing spiritual thing. I mean, the tune is like a prayer that builds, you know, it's confession in there, it's realization in there, there's praise in there. Tell me about this song in particular.
Ask Him. Ask Him means my love. And I wrote it, I was in Turkey, in Turkish.
Okay.
And, you know, love is an interesting thing.
Amen.
It comes in so many different forms.
Yeah.
You know, you can love a person, you can love an idea, you can love a time, you can love, you know what I mean? It's,
right.
And the interesting thing is that depending on what it's applied to, it changes, you know, and so, and it grows as you grow, and as your depth kind of dictates the depth of your love, and so yeah, it's kind of just it's you know, I wrote it for my girlfriend I had at the time,
okay,
but it's kind of grown into this thing that is more generalized. It's more like it's a song that I wrote for love, you know what I mean? Because it and that's why I think that song, it kind of like it grows. It starts off in this really kind of soft place, and it just like love, it can go any direction. You know, when we play it live, it goes all over the place.
Yes, it does.
You know. So.
Now, the funny thing, it means love. The funny thing is that when I finished playing it, I followed it up with Jeff Bradshaw's version of Music Soul Child's Love.
Oh, wow.
With Kim Burrell singing behind
Ooh.
it. Man, let me tell you.
Yeah.
I mean, tears were just flowing down my face. I had people
yeah.
calling me, telling me they had to pull over on the side of the road Incredible piece of work.
Oh,
Kamasi, Washington, in studio again here on the Cool Jazz Countdown. The CD, 3-disc set, most of the tracks on here are lengthy. But I love the fact that as far as jazz radio is concerned, you didn't come to us and say, hey, here's, album tracks, here's shorter versions of those tracks. You kind of left things where they were and said, this is who I am. And I love the fact that the tracks are lengthy because they take us through a couple of different movements there. Was there any pushback for you to change things around on the album at all?
I mean, that was the cool thing about putting it out on Brain Feeder. They really just left it to me. And, for me, it was like, I don't necessarily buy into this notion that people have that people don't have the attention span to enjoy something that's more than 3 minutes long.
It's lengthy.
Because I go like, well, wait a minute now. Like whenever someone jumps into a new series, like let somebody, tomorrow get into the Game of Thrones. They're going to watch 30, 40 hours of it on Netflix. They're going to get there and watch 8, 9 seasons of it.
Yeah. Binge watch it.
So they have the attention span. And so my thing was just like, my music is telling a story in a lot of ways. And it's like, it doesn't really work chopped up. You know what I mean? And even the album, the epic that I was really talking about, there was a story that kind of came to me when I was making the album. And that's why I call it the epic, because it's a story. And
what is the story?
It's a long story. I mean, I'll give you a short.
Give us the radio version.
So when I was writing acts, because the string and choir arrangements I wrote after the band recorded.
Okay.
What we
did. Okay.
And I wrote them around what we did.
Okay, makes sense.
So I was working on the string and choir arrangements for Change of the Guard. And I started having a reoccurring dream about this guy who was standing. He guarded a gate at the top of a mountain, and that's all he did. He didn't do anything else. He didn't have a house. He didn't have a family. Nothing else. That was his only purpose of existence.
Okay.
And he'd been up there for hundreds of years. And there was a village at the bottom of the mountain. And in this village, all the people did in this village was train to one day go and challenge the guard at the gate. And so there's this whole thing where he ends up dreaming that he meets these 4 warriors, and one of them is able to beat him, but then he realizes that he wasn't really fighting anyone. He was just watching these little kids training to one day meet him, and it goes on. They go all over the world, and they lose this guy, and it was a long, lengthy thing. And so for me, the music, it tells a story, and it serves a purpose, So it's kind of like when you change it, you lose that, So it's like almost like, I mean, I could edit it for you so that but it didn't. What do you?
It dilutes what
you
have.
What are you getting?
Right,
You're not getting the story. It's almost like if you only got 5 of the commandments. You know what I mean? That's cool. You got 5 of them.
Right.
But, you know what I mean?
It's not the whole story.
It's not the whole story.
Big tour going on now. Just came from the West Coast, now here on the East Coast. I had the pleasure of checking you out in Washington, D.C. the other day. Incredible show from start to finish. Love the movement, love the energy. Are you bringing in different musicians as you go from city to city?
No, we're all traveling together.
Okay.
We hop in the bus.
Wow. Okay. And I love the fact you have a young man. You're bringing up the next generation now, a 17-year-old.
Yeah. That was another part. It's like, we have my generation before me,
right,
and a generation underneath me. There's a kid named Jamel Dean that's been making all kind of noise in Los Angeles.
Amazing. I was blown away when you said he was 17.
Yeah, I was blown away. I mean, we had a rehearsal before we went on the road, so I wrote all the piano parts and had everything all set out for charts for him. And he came by and I was like, yeah, there's a book of charts. He was like, oh, no, I don't need it. He's like, I learned the whole record. Wow. And he learned the whole record, mistakes and everything. There was a couple of things I was like,
didn't mean to do that.
Brandon might have been playing the wrong chord right there. It sounds cool.
Right.
That's why I kept it.
Right.
Because it sounds cool.
Right.
But this is actually what the chord is, But I was like, wow, man, like in this young generation of musicians, man, they're so like they're so advanced.
They are.
You know what I mean?
I mean, the technology has moved them light years ahead of.
And they're refined. Like when we were young, we were good, and we had a lot of fire, but we were raw. You know, we needed some sandpaper.
Right,
you know what I mean, to get us.
Yeah.
These young kids, like Jamel and Mike Mitchell, played with him with Stanley Clark, and I was just like, wow, man, you guys are. I'm excited to hear. I mean, you sound like this at 17. What are you gonna be playing like when you're 25?
Right.
I can't wait. I want to
Something to look forward to.
yeah, I'm looking forward to it like much. So when I had the opportunity to bring someone out, I was like, man, let me bring this young kid out and let him what I mean. And it's been great. It's been fun.
Nice. Kamasi Washington in studio right now, hanging out with us here on the Cool Jazz Countdown. If you have an opportunity, check him out on tour. Most definitely pick up the CD. It is called The Epic Volumes 1, 2, and 3. Your website, what is it for folks to check in with you?
KamasiWashington.com. KAMASI.
Cool brother indeed. Thank you so much for stopping past the Cool Jazz Countdown. It's been a pleasure. The doors are wide open for you. I can't wait for the next project. But in the meantime, you left us with a lot of music to hold on to for right now. But I can't wait for the next project, and I look forward to sitting down with you again right here in the Cool Jazz Countdown.
Well, but thank you for the invite. Thanks for having me and helping to spread the word.
Pleasure's all ours. Kamasi Washington right here on the Cool Jazz Countdown.